Hello, after completing my grade 12, life was not so easy. I found myself working as a security guard in order to survive. And in the process, I lost my girlfriend who was ashamed of me. And by God's grace, I'm now working for one of the best banks in Africa, AB Bank. My name is Muteke, and this is my story. Coming from a humble background, and after I completed my grade 12, my parents were both not working. The situation was not easy at home. Things were very, very, very difficult. You know, we would watch each other not knowing where the meals would come from at the end of the day. And I remember this day, it was on a Friday, I told myself, I'm not just gonna wait for the situation to just be the way it has been. And I told myself, you know, I just need to do something. I remember going to the light industrial areas there, you know, looking for a job in search, knocking at different gates, asking if I can be given something to do, until this man came out and told us that today actually there will be recruiting for security. So if you guys are willing, you can come through as well. The only thing they asked at that place, I think, were the NRCs. And thank God by then I actually carried it. So when we waited until 11 hours somewhere, and this white man came and you know, interviewed us, checked how fit we were, asked us to run for some time, did some physical exercise here and there, and that's it. That itself was an interview. And you know, I was one of the people that was told that you qualify for a job and you need to report on Monday at one of the construction companies in Ibex. And you know, it was amazing. I was excited, you know, but the key and the question for me was, what am I going to tell my parents at home that I found a job as a security? So before we left, we were given the uniforms, the boots, and everything that has to do with you know, protective measures as security guards. And the issue of carrying those stuffs to go with them at home was not so easy. So Monday came, I left home early in the morning, reported as a security guard, I think at one of the construction sites in Ibex. You know, I didn't dress up actually from home. I had to wear the uniform when I reached there. You know, worked there, knocked off, you know, the routine continued. It was not so easy, but one thing that I was so sure of is the fact that I told myself, you know, you'll never be ready until you start now. You just have to start. And, you know, and the fire in me kept on burning. You know, I told myself I have to change the situation at home. And the first thing that I did in that week was to open an account with one of the banks. And when I walked in that bank, I looked at how my friends were working, the environment and everything. I told myself, one day I have to work in a bank as well. So I opened a savings account with one of the banks. And the aim and the goal for me working as a security guard was to ensure that I save as much as I could. So the first 1 month was not so easy because I would leave the house, you know, dressed up in my casual attires, carry a bag. But when I reach at work, that's where I would do the changing and everything for people not to know. Very few people, actually no one actually knew that I was working as a security guard. I used to hide it because number one is that I was ashamed. Number two is that I was not comfortable. Number three is that I was not so sure how the society or people, you know, would look at me, especially the friends from mom, my friends, and so on. So I used to hide it, in short. But with the aim and the goal of knowing that by the end of the day, I need to save something and, you know, go to school. Thank God, you know, Daddy found a job. I think that was in the second month when I started working. Because in the first month, with the little that I used to get, I would help out. So most of the savings started I would say 95% of my income would go to my savings account with the aim of going to school. And in that same month, I think Dad found a job as a truck driver. So most of the times he was never at home. You know, he would travel in and out. So, you know, life continued and no one knew what I was doing in the background. I would go to church, you know, hung around with my friends, but in the background, something was just not okay, because I was doing something I was not comfortable, and something that, I didn't want people to know. But everything changed when I worked for 6 months, when the boss said, the site has become busy and you cannot continue working in the day. So you guys are going to be rotating, and you also have to start reporting in the night. So, a rotation shift was shared, and most of my days I was supposed to start reporting at night. And the key for me was how how I was going to explain this situation at home, because no one knew. They just thought I was just doing something, out there, and actually no one even knew where I was working. So the first day I reported in the night was not so easy. I had to tell mom that we are packing boxes that are going to the airport, which is actually not good at all, because and she said, okay, it's fine, just be safe and everything. So the routine continued. It was not so easy, and because most of my schedules were in the night. But one day things changed. I knocked off, reached home around 7 hours. I was very, very tired. With my usual bag where I used to hide my uniform and other security protective measures or things. Reached home to put the bag down. Of course, the boots that I used to wear, I would hide them under the bed, the uniform under the bed, in case you might be asking where I used to do my washings. All these used to be done while at work. But this day, I went with them at home, and I dozed off, and that's how I slept. Our bedroom at that time was looking so dirty. So mom came in our bedroom, helped us to sweep it. As she was cleaning, she had to, as she was mopping and cleaning, and she saw the boots which were under the bed and the uniform, and she didn't say anything. But when I woke up, I think she had to question me and said, what's happening with the uniform that I'm seeing? Are you working as a security guard? It was not easy at that time. I just had to open up to say, I think it's time. That's what I've been doing for the past 6 months and everything. She said, you don't have to be ashamed of it. All you have to do is just be open, and we are your parents. We have to know. Worse, if your fathers know that this is what you're doing, I think things are not going to be easy. But like I've said, Dad was in and out as a truck driver, so he never knew. After a year, I was moved from the construction site at IBEX. I was moved to game stores at Manda Hill, positioned at the main entrance. I think most of you, I met you, most of you might have, met me there, because what used to happen is that before the customer walks out, would ask for the receipt just to compare, just to ensure that the receipt is tiring with the goods that we are seeing in the trolley, and also just to say thank you to the customers. So I was positioned at the main entrance for game stores. It was very interesting, because on certain days like Sunday, while there I would meet my church mates, my friends, and stuff like that. It was not so easy, because there are certain days that I would see someone that I know that is walking towards the entrance of game stores, and I'm just there. So before they enter, I would find myself to excuse myself and just go behind, so that the person should not see me. It was not so easy. It was not so easy out there. But when I worked for 2 years, I told myself I have to resign. I think this is where everything changed. In the process, I lost my girlfriend, who was not so comfortable with me resigning, because part of the small income that I used to earn, I would share it with her as well. In the process, I think she was not comfortable with me resigning. I think we had an argument here and there, but that's another long story that I won't dive in so much. But in the process, I think I lost her. I had to resign, and went to ZCAS, inquire and applied for school. Thank God I was accepted, and that's how I started studying banking and finance. I was so sure of what I wanted to do from the word go. I was so sure of what I wanted to do from the word go. With the small little income that I had, savings from my account, I had to pay for the first and second semester. It covered everything, but the third semester came, negotiations had to come in. There are certain days that I would miss class. There are certain payments that were needed at school that were very difficult to pay. And the environment at ZCAS is just, it is just so good, and everyone has a certain standard out there. Competition, is very high, but I had to live life within my means. Certain days I would miss classes, just here and there. But 2 years down the line, I cleared all my courses, and that's how I graduated the next year. I think that was 2016, as a banker under the Zambia Institute of Financial Services. The process continued the journey continued of looking for a job, and Access Bank Zambia offered me a job. They offered me a job, good environment. Started working there, and I worked there, I think, for a good 2 years, and I left and found myself again with another very good bank, which I'm working for right now, UBA Bank, United Bank for Africa, Zambia, at head office. And it's been an amazing journey. But all in this, I want someone to be encouraged out there in case you're watching and you might be in the same position, working as a security guard or not so sure exactly what you're doing. I want you to know that for me, number one is that, like I said, you never get ready until you start. So whatsoever you are believing God for, just start. Whether it's a salon business with a small income that you have, you never wait for so much money to start. You just have to get started, and the rest will fall in place. The Bible says in the book of Isaiah 2:1 that for Zion's sake, I will not remain silent. And I want you to know that for the sake of you, the Bible is encouraging us that God will not remain silent, meaning that he knows exactly what you want. And Jeremiah 33:3, call unto me, I will answer you and tell you great and unsearchable things that you do not know. This is one of my favorite scriptures that I would quote almost every day as I go to work. As I was working as a security guard, I would quote this scripture. Lord, you've said I should call unto you. You've said I should call unto you. You will be able to show me great and unsearchable things that I do not know. God has been faithful. The journey hasn't been so easy, and we keep on pushing every day to ensure that we make a difference. Society is one of the things I think that will never accept everything for us. And if you follow what society says, you'll never be comfortable, because it will judge you, whether you work as a security guard, whether you work as a barberman, whether you work as, whatsoever you do, society will always judge you. Whether you are married, whether you are single, society will always judge you. In the process, I had people that judged me. I'd lost friends that were not comfortable with me. Worse off, I think, when I started school at ZCAS, there are certain Saturdays and weekends that I would miss class just to go and, do something out there in order to pay for my exams and, pay for a certain, just to cover certain payments that were needed at ZCAS. So it was not so easy, but we must still push. Even now, I would say, in as much as I'm working as a banker, there are still certain things that are not easy. Like I've said, the environment will never accept us the way we are, but we just have to push and keep on believing God and trusting for everything that we believe, that we are trusting God for.
Would you say, when you sit today and look back at where you're coming from, would you say you had some certain level of pride in you because you were ashamed of working as a security guard when you were coming from a home that literally had nothing and you had no one to look up to?
For me, I wouldn't call it pride. I would call it, I think, what even made it worse is that my circle of friends, was at the high level of circle of friends that were coming from very good background. I think most of them were from church, And so the background that they were coming from was very, very good. They had almost everything. So in order to fit in, I didn't want to also show myself as if I was coming from a background that was not what to do. Like I've said, no one was working at home at that time. And working as a security guard, I didn't want to. So I wanted to fit in where I was not, which was, I think, the number one killer and number one mistake.
And what would you say to young people today that are living such a life where they want to fit in, but then situations and circumstances surrounding them are not favoring them? What lesson did you learn in your trying to fit in?
You need to be yourself. Once you accept the way you are, the background that you're coming from, the family that you're coming from, you accept the job that you're doing or what you're doing, the environment, you will understand that even those friends or the circle around you will begin to appreciate what you are, what you do, and what you can offer on the table. So you find that you will have certain things that are common because number one is that you've accepted yourself. So it becomes so easy for them to accept you as well.
Let's talk about being comfortable with where you are and having a mindset that wants to change the narrative. The difference between being comfortable, and I say this because with your case, you looked at the environment where you're coming from, and you say, "I want to make a difference in my life." And then there are people that if they just get that security guard job, it's like, oh, I've arrived, and they can't push themselves beyond. They can't see themselves beyond that because where I'm coming from, if I've done this, I'm far much better off than the rest of my family members.
Okay, great. So it's very interesting that today if I go to game stores, some of my friends that I used to work with, yeah, I would say 6, 7 years down the line, they are still working there as security guards. So it's very interesting that when I go there, I still find them at the door, and we greet each other. I cannot ignore them. We shake hands, and others will even tell you, inspire me, you inspire me. But one of the questions that I always ask them is, are you comfortable where you are? Why not make a difference? So I think the fear to begin a new chapter is one of the things that I've noticed that most people, are not willing to take. The fear of willing to pursue or, push on after a heartbreak or start a new page, is one of the things that I've seen that people find, very difficult. It was not easy for me. It was not easy for me. I told myself, enough is enough. Something has to change, and no one is going to change this if if I'm not going to do something about it. Yeah, I don't know if that answers.
Yeah. Are you married? Because you spoke about somebody leaving you, so we want to know if
Yes,
you eventually overcame the heartbreak. You healed from the heartbreak, rather. So yeah.
yes, yes, yes. Yes, I am married to one woman, and one very good, supportive woman. I'm married, and she's been very supportive in this journey. And yes, I think. Let me also say that the healing process was not so easy. Yeah, you're working as a security guard, and you tell your partner that I want to resign the job, and she tells you, no, this cannot happen because of a little income that you share with us. So I remember actually investing in this partner, by buying certain stuff so that she can open up a salon. And that really affected my journey for school because, like I said, part of the saving, 95% of the saving was going towards school, and removed a certain percentage, you know, invested in her and told her, you need to start this salon business so that, you can start having some sort of income for yourself. And she was still not comfortable. But the journey continues. Yeah.
What would be a word of encouragement to young people that are coming from, backgrounds such as yours, and their future looks dark? I think my brother and I were talking about today specifically. We're talking about how that um, our futures were dark. They were not even blared because
Yeah.
if it's blared, at least you can see
See
there's something
something.
somewhere, right?
Yeah.
But there are those futures that are dark. Like you're just living, you're waking up, and you don't even know what next. what tomorrow looks like. So to such people that are in such situations, what would you say to them, because you walked their path before?
Okay, great. So, number one is that you must know your identity. For me, I think a heartbreak also made me to know exactly what I wanted in life. It shaped a certain part in me, and so if you know your identity, you know exactly what you want in life. Nothing becomes difficult. But sometimes, like you've said, the future looks a bit blurred, you know, looks a bit blurred, and you and I must know that no one will come and paint the picture of your future with the color that you want. You have to get up yourself, get the brush, and begin to paint it the way you want to see it. So for me, I told myself, even if this future looks a bit blurred, I have to paint it, the picture, in a way that I want. I would have made a decision to still remain there, at game stores, because it was very interesting. But I told myself I have to make a difference, and it's very interesting. And we progress is process. Nothing just happens in a day. Progress is process. I had to endure for 2 years just to raise up certain monies for me to go to school. I would have decided to invest in a barber shop. I would have decided to open a shop or a grocery shop. I would have decided to chew that money or buy a console and begin to enjoy it at home. But I told myself, I need to sacrifice, I need to focus, I need to remain persistent, I need to be in prayer. I think prayer is one of the key things that has also helped me with this. Is also reminding me of Joel 3:7. The Bible, Joshua 3:7. The Bible says, "Today I will begin to establish you in the sight of all nations, and the people know that the same God was with Moses is with us today." So, the Bible does not talk about next week or any other day, but it talks about today. So today, if you wake up and tell yourself, I need to paint this color for my future, definitely, it will not be blurred, but you will be able to see some attraction in that color.
Right. Thank you for sharing your story. Lastly, to someone who's saying, who's choosing when it comes to they're picky when it comes to jobs, but they literally have nothing they're doing. Nami, I'm a graduate. I can't do ABCD. What would you say to such a one?
Okay, so you also don't have to be picky when it comes to jobs. Like I've said, you never get ready until you just start. One job can lead you to another position. So as a graduate, you don't have to be picky. Just begin where you are. Start with what's there at hand. Enjoy it. Give it the best support that you can. Enjoy it. Just enjoy what you're doing. Don't be picky. Like I've said, most of the times we look at people, we look at society. We are so afraid of people judging us, and we are even failing to take up certain spaces. So don't look at what people say. Family, relatives, with what you have, just start. As a graduate, or whilst you're in college, if you can still do something better, just start, and the society will accept you the way you are.